Hey everyone. I'm so excited to see everyone from all over the world here. This is pretty cool, and I see the numbers keep ticking up. We have about 180 people signed up for this. I don't know how many of them will actually show up, but it's cool to see people joining from all over the world. So please, if you can hear me, fine. I know there's a little bit of traffic sounds here. But if you can hear me fine and you see the video, say something in the chat just so I know that I'm not talking to the air and that you're all waiting for sound and video. I have a pretty decent microphone. It might actually be too decent for this location because there's also a highway not too far away, and I've been told you can hear it. But cool. So I see now the reactions coming in. Awesome. So a lot of people can hear me fine. Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. This is such a crazy time. A lot of us are probably calling from home. Some of us have kids running around. Some of us are not, maybe in the mood to invest in the future and to learn new skills or to kind of think about. And some of us might be actually in the perfect mood for that. So hopefully this will be a nice distraction and also something that's educational and that you can use quickly, maybe right away in your companies. And if not, maybe it's something that can kind of help you set up for your career. So before we actually start, let me pull up quickly the little presentation I have and kind of go through a couple of technicalities. So before we really dive into the content, I want to talk to you a little bit about just this Crowdcast tool and how to best utilize it. So in the center stage that you're seeing now, this is my space. I'm like the director, and I have the presentation and I have my own video. Occasionally through the run through of the sprint, we have a couple of exercises that we could pull someone up to talk to us and participate in the exercise. And so when that happens, I'm going to ask for volunteers, and I'm going to invite one of the volunteers to come up on the air with me. But essentially, nobody else is being shown on the screen. We can't hear anyone. You're safe. There's just a chat window on the side where this is where I would really ask you to participate, especially when I'm asking for suggestions as part of the exercises. So you should be fine just typing your stuff, or if you want to volunteer, you might get a chance to actually go up on the air. So there's also a couple of options that you might notice, like ask a question and polls. So this is, I'll just say a couple words on this. So if you have any question come up, the first instinct might be to just type it in chat. I would ask you to actually instead click ask a question and write your question there. You get full credit for the question, your name is saved with it, but other people can read it and they can upvote it if they're also interested in it. And the result is a list of questions sorted by priority, and it's actually really, really helpful for me to go to this one place, see all the questions, and tackle the most important ones. So every once in a while, I'm going to stop and answer some questions, and that's where I'm going to go. So appreciate that. The other thing that you should look at is the polls. I put together 2 polls in there, and I think it's going to really help me to know who's who, what is your level of experience with sprints, also what's your role, what's your professional background, so that I can sort of tailor it a little bit better as I go along. If I know that everybody's pretty experienced, I can maybe do less introductory stuff. But looking now, it looks like we don't have too many very experienced sprinters, and it's mostly people who are learning about sprints or just heard about them but want to know more. So that's perfect. So let me skip ahead here. Okay, so with that in mind, so thank you. I'm just gonna get started. I'm not getting a lot of feedback from the crowd. So the easiest way for me is to kind of go with my presentation. I sort of keep an eye on the chat, but don't expect me to be super responsive because it's hard to kind of split my attention. But I think it's going to be worth your while. So first of all, I'm Eran Dror. I'm CEO and founder of Remake Labs, which is a company that focuses entirely on design sprints. That's all we do. Design sprints and other kind of time-boxed workshops for product design. And this is the path that I took. These are a couple of startups. I even though I'm in Israel now, I'm near Tel Aviv. I lived in New York City for about a decade. These are some of the companies I work with. Gust is still it's a platform for investors in early stage startups. It's kind of like a social network for crowdfunding. SetGem was a smart TV startup, which we sold to Motorola in 2012. And ever since then, I've been mostly working with super early stage startups, helping them create their MVP, their first version of their product. And so this is kind of the path that I took. This is a book that I self-published. If you're interested in this, I don't know if you can read this. It's called The Book of Hard Truth. And the first one is You're Going to Die. And the rest of the truths are sort of along these lines, the kind of hard truths to accept that we better just accept. And this gives you a sense of the type of advice you might get from me as an entrepreneur and as a designer. And this is an article from Entrepreneur that I published a couple of years ago. It was one of the most shared articles at the time. I was super excited. It's about the hard truths of entrepreneurships and how ego can kind of send us down the wrong path, and kind of being hyper realistic and hyper reality oriented about entrepreneurship. And this is a thesis that I actually just submitted a couple of days ago. It's a master's thesis that combines artificial intelligence and Buddhist philosophy, essentially looking at what Buddhist philosophy has to say about building safe and beneficial artificial intelligence. So just so you know that I'm super weird and I have different weird interests. But this is the company that I'm representing today, and my company, and this is what we're talking about. We're talking about design sprints as a way to get better products faster, right? So to manage expectations a little bit, so we have about 2 hours, and we're gonna essentially cover two things. So the first thing is, what's a design sprint, right? Just giving you a background on what it is, why you should care, who's running them, that sort of thing. And then the second is, we're going to give you a taste of the sprint, and the more participation, the better, because if people don't participate, then I'll just run through it kind of on my own, and it will feel like more like a lecture. But what we've seen with a couple of webinars we did before, there was a ton of participation, and actually you start to feel like what the sprint actually feels like, because people throwing all these ideas, and you start feeling the power of it. So I think this is going to be best if we can get people to actually participate. So I'll say a couple words on focus. So the two authors of the sprint book, which we're going to talk about today, this is their next book, Make Time. And they're essentially talking about the power of focusing every day on the one thing that matters most that day. So it's your highlight of the day. And I think the reason why I'm bringing this up is it's a really powerful way to go about work and life, and it's the way that you'll learn best and you benefit most from this session. So if you feel like you might be in a situation where it's hard to focus, and you might have kids running around, or you might be in a hurry to get someplace else, and all of that is great. But if you could try to set aside this time to actually pay attention and participate, I think this is the way you'll get the most benefit from it and really kind of experience the power. So just putting it out there. So what can you expect from this session? I think my goal for you for this session is you'll understand design sprints at a pretty high level. You'll understand exactly what design sprints are. You'll understand when to run them. You'll understand the power of them, and you can start thinking about when to use them and how to use them in your organization. And I can also give you some pointers on how to get started. So those are you won't be an expert facilitator after 2 hours, but you can hopefully really have a good grasp of why this is cool, why this is important, where does it fit in, etc. So let's get started. So what's a design sprint? So the way that we put it, and it's there's a lot of wordings out there to explain what a design sprint is, but it's a 5-day process which allows 3 to 10 people on average to solve large problems and test new ideas together. And this is mostly for products, but people have used design sprints for internal processes, for strategies, because it's a pretty flexible and kind of broad type of format, so you can really make it fit many different scenarios. But the core idea of the sprint, if I had to kind of define the arc of a sprint story, is you go from an idea in the beginning, you come in with an idea, you go through an exercise to kind of merge and filter the best ideas from everyone in a group of experts. You create a prototype that is as realistic as you can in that time, and then you have a full day of user testing at the end. That's the 5th day of the sprint. And so you can imagine how much you can learn in a short amount of time by going through this arc. This is what a sprint looks like in normal days. You see how close people are standing. Now we're kind of getting, in Corona times, we're kind of getting a shudder when we see people stand this close. We're like, oh my God, have they not heard? But this is, one of our sprints, and it's a very physical process. So we use sticky notes. We sketch on pieces of paper. We actually use scissors and tape. So it's kind of crazy. Think about, and in these days, of course, everyone has moved to remote sprints. And so this is our remote sprint template at Remake Labs. It essentially includes all the major exercises in a way that's very easy to navigate, and you can sort of you essentially can get a group from all over the world joining this Miro board and collaborating and doing the sprint together. So how did it start? What's the history? So this is my buddy Jake Knapp from Google. He was a product designer at Gmail, and before that he worked for Microsoft. Then he worked for Gmail as one of the product designers, and he was the very first designer of Google Hangouts, which is now Google Meet. And he tells a story where he had to fly the technical team for Google Hangouts for this idea that they had was in Stockholm. And so he actually flew from California, from San Francisco, into Stockholm to work with the team. And because he was coming in from California, they cleared the entire week for him to come in, and they didn't have any meetings and any disruptions. And because he was flying in, he didn't have any of the normal meetings as well. So it was a full week of this designer and this tech team just being alone in a room together and trying to create a new product. And the idea was, let's create a meeting platform that works entirely in the browser. They had some ideas about interactions, and the core idea was it's a meeting, but you can send a link. You send a link to someone, and they're in the meeting, which back then was pretty new and fascinating. And at the end of this week, Jake actually says they had a working prototype. So it was actually possible to have meetings on this prototype. It already had a lot of the interactions which we later knew from Google Hangouts, including the travel camera and all that stuff that moves kind of to the speaker. Some of the stuff was brand new at the time. And after this week, people in Google already started using it for meetings. And so the product, I mean, you can imagine what a mind-blowing experience of spending a week with building a product, and then people already start using it, and essentially that's goes up from there, and it's a real product now that millions of people use. So Jake started thinking, wow, this was one of the most productive weeks of my life, and I wish every week was this effective. And that's when he started creating the design sprint. And essentially what he did was look at a lot of best practices out there from the world of design thinking and UX design and prototyping and testing, and try to create a week that would be the perfect week that ends in a user test. And he ran this over many projects at Google. Essentially every product that Google has, at some point Jake was involved with them running a design sprint. You can think about Chrome and Android and ads and of course search, and there's so many products, right? And he kept adapting it. He kept improving it and seeing what works, and this takes too much time, and kind of really honing it. And then he got snatched into Google Ventures, which is Google investment arm, where he continued to improve together with the other design partners at Google Ventures, continued to improve the sprint, and they actually ran it with about 150 startups, and every time kind of improving it. And there's a lot of really great ideas that are meant to kind of reduce risk for startups and do better validation. And so, by the way, an article that I recently published about using the Google Ventures sprint to de-risk for investors, to know that they can use it to de-risk their investment and really make sure that they're spending their money on the right thing, on building the right thing, and not on building the wrong thing. So the book was published in 2016, and ever since then, it sort of caught on. It took off like crazy. These are some companies that I know are running design sprints. There's I keep hearing of new ones every day, but you can see pretty much every big companies running them, big tech companies running them. But it's interesting to look at even a company like Lego, right? Which Lego does not build software at all. They build Legos, Lego sets, and they actually move their entire design process. Every product now starts with a design sprint. And the way they do it is, clearly they have the ability to quickly create these kits and, put the boxes, everything in them, and test to see if it works, to see if kids like it. And they only mass produce the things that work. So this is kind of the variety of companies that use it. Even the large consultants all kind of started offering it, including Agile, which is a legendary design company that designed the first Mac with Apple. But McKinsey, I don't know if there's any McKinsey people here. So I don't want to say anything bad about McKinsey, but they launched their McKinsey Concept Sprint, which, I read everything that I could find about it. And, it essentially looks exactly like the 5-day design sprint, except, they changed the names of everything, and they don't seem to give a lot of credit to Jake and the book. And I actually asked Jake what he thought about it, and he didn't mind much, but you can see that it's really taking off. So that begs the question of why did it catch so quickly, right? What's happening here? Because this is, it's a pretty incredible growth for methodology. So I can, to summarize, I would say, of course, because coming up with new and desirable product design ideas is just insanely hard. And it's, a lot of people think they can do it, but actually doing it in a way that, actual users, when they see it, they want to use it and they know how to use it, etc., is really difficult. But companies, these are some of the questions that companies might ask themselves, that didn't, before the sprint, didn't really have a great answer, right? So how might we benefit from multiple viewpoints and multiple forms of expertise without getting bogged down in endless meetings, right? This is a huge problem for big companies especially, but even startups, in my experience, there's a lot of startups that are actually afraid of consulting a lot of experts because they think, everybody's going to have their own opinion, and we get bogged down in endless meetings, and it's just going to ruin my motivation, etc. So how can we benefit from these multiple viewpoints without all of that bad stuff. The other question is, of course, if we have so many team members and so many experts and investors, et cetera, how can we focus them? Each one of them might have a different priorities. How can we make sure that we focus on really the key strategic challenges? And then how can we align all these cross-functional teams around a single vision and make it clear and make them all kind of agree that this is the right vision and ready to go? And for developers, how can we provide them with clear goals and prevent the scope from constantly changing and exploding? And this is another one. If we need real data, we have a question, we have two pricing models, we don't know which one works better, or we're wondering whether this pivot would actually make a difference. How can we get real data quickly without just talking about it forever, or entering month-long research efforts? And that's something that the sprint actually can give an answer to. And for larger companies, how can we become more innovative? Everybody's asking this, without blasting away our existing process that's paying the salary now, that's paying the money. So a lot of these companies, they have the core business that brings the money. They want to keep innovating and inventing, but they don't want to tell people to stop what they're doing. So the sprint, by creating kind of this week apart, really helps doing that. And you can literally put, let's say, a sprint every quarter and have 4 new products in the pipeline without necessarily massively disrupting the process, the existing process. And then, of course, these development cycles that last forever. So we all know, this is the theory of product design, right? We have an idea, we build a product, we launch it, then we start collecting data about usage, et cetera. We learn new things that gives us new ideas, and the cycle keeps going, right? But we all know that really building takes longer than that. It maybe even looks like this, right? So the idea of a sprint is to go from idea to data super quickly, to shorten the loop as much as possible. You have an idea, you're on a sprint, you test it. And I think that's the power. And I would say this is one of my favorite quotes from Yogi Berra, who had a lot of great quotes. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else, right? You want to know before you start developing, as we want to be lean and agile, but that doesn't mean just start coding as soon as you have a kind of a rough idea. Ideally, you'd have a clear vision of where you want to go before you start. So just a couple, I'm going to talk a couple more points about the design sprints and how they fit in, and then I'll answer some questions, and then we'll start to the simulation, and we're going to actually experience what it feels like. So brief history, right? In 2001, this book came out, Agile Software Development with Scrum, which is sort of the Bible of Agile and Agile development. And essentially, if I had to explain what it says, it says, don't build something in a vacuum forever. Build in short sprints of 2 weeks, maybe a month, and release a new version of the product. And essentially, you can have a backlog that's very, very long, but you want to stay agile. You want to stay adaptable. And so keep building in short spurts. You only lock yourself in for 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And the idea is that you can get feedback early, you can correct, you can kind of think on your feet, and you can stay agile. But 10 years later, this book came out, which is the kind of other Bible now of the startup age, which is The Lean Startup by Eric Rice. And the idea here is they introduced this idea of build, measure, learn, right? So you build a product, you measure the results, and you learn, and you build the leanest, most minimal, it's called the minimal viable product. You build the minimum that you need to build to validate. Now, what a sprint allows you to do is be even leaner than that, right? Because you go from idea to learning directly. And the way you do it is by faking it. So you actually don't build anything. You fake something using a lot of great prototyping tools and creativity. And the goal is you can get an authentic reaction from someone by building something that feels real but doesn't actually have a single line of code. And so that's why sprints are kind of the next new wave on this agile development, lean development front. So some key features. So established and respected. I think, we might dismiss that. Oh yeah, so who cares? But when you're working with someone who's very locked in, or a client that thinks they know exactly what they want to build, or a manager who is not really inclined to listen, and you're asking them to let go of control for 5 days and run this process, it really helps that a lot of great companies are running it routinely. It's it's a powerful statement. Short dedicated time, that means you can put it on the calendar, and not only know when it starts, you also know when it finishes, and it brings so much predictability, because that on a certain date you're going to have a prototype, you're going to have feedback on that prototype. It's going to be the best prototype that this group of people can produce. So this is sufficient time to really explore different alternatives and different ideas, and to choose the best ones. So there's so much predictability that's contained in these 5 days. The chaos is contained in these 5 days, so that the rest of the year can be a lot more predictable. You can spend time building and improving. It requires a discovery mindset, which is great, like I mentioned before, because we spend so much time listening to other people, looking at other people's ideas. Of course, we're all also contributing our ideas, but because of this kind of open structure, it puts us in a much more receptive mindset, and in a much more we're much more likely to change our mind, to adapt, to learn from other people's opinions and ideas, because of this structure. So it's kind of sneaky in that way, but it works phenomenally, and we make better decisions for it. Then there's time boxing. So you may have noticed my time timer right here. And this is the best disciplinary tool that you'll ever have in a sprint. All you have to do, if we have 45 minutes to sketch, all you have to do is set this to 45 minutes. And guess what? Everybody knows exactly how much time there is. Everybody's spending the right amount of time on the task, and also chatting less and doing less distractions. And of course, it includes all the required steps for, at least a minimum amount of the required steps to really validate and really do a good job. So one of the stories that Jake tells is he read about Atul Gawande's book, The Checklist. And Atul Gawande, I don't know if you've heard about him, but he's a famous surgeon that writes bestsellers. And he wrote The Checklist to prove that surgeons that follow a checklist, pre-op checklist, save lives, compared to doctors of the same caliber. By the way, a lot of sunshine here, so I don't know if I'm starting to look like a ghost. There's essentially the checklist. We're imperfect beings. So if you take two surgeons at the same level of empathy, same everything, but one of them follows a checklist for everything that needs to be done, and the other doesn't. They just trust their own experience. That person that doesn't have the checklist is going to kill more patients, because we're human and we forget to wash our hands sometimes. We forget to do things that a checklist could have helped us. And Jake was thinking about that and was like, hey, we cut a lot of corners as designers because of human pressures, because our boss really wants to run quickly, because the client doesn't want to talk to enough experts or do proper testing. And if we only had this checklist that you can run through in a week and be sure you at least covered the basics, that's going to make a huge difference. And he was right. I think this is what the sprint is. Another principle is 100% focused attention. So we have this rule in the sprint. If you have a call, if you need to use your phone, if you want to check your email, it's okay, but just get out of the room, because in the room, you're always supposed to be doing something pretty much every minute of the sprint, except for lunches, lunch breaks. you're supposed to be doing something. You're supposed to be drawing. You're supposed to be thinking about something. And so if you're distracted on your phone, you're not actually doing it. So this rule kind of keeps it simple and transparent. Alone together is another important principle. So oftentimes, this is from a sprint in the US we did recently. If oftentimes we start by each working on our own ideas, and then we share and compare and vote on them. So we don't start talking right away. And this is especially important for Israelis, because Israelis love to argue. So I always tell them, if three smart people trying to solve a problem and they talk, they're going to end up with one idea. And it's going to be a pretty good idea, but they're going to have one good idea. But if the same three smart people first work separately, each on their own idea, we're going to end up with three good ideas, and probably could find aspects of each good idea that are good anyway. And so we can start combining the best aspects of each of these ideas into something that's way better than just that one idea you would end up with if you just started talking. So this is an incredibly important principle. And of course, tangible discussions over abstract blah blah discussions. So I don't know if you've had this experience. I've had it so many times where two people just argue in words, and you can argue with someone for an hour. Then you each have your own idea, whatever, and then someone comes in from the outside, hears you arguing, and then draws a solution that you both agree with right away. So what were you arguing about, right? It's like it's kind of silly, and this is one of the things that the sprint wants to prevent is all of the discussions. We bring something tangible to the table, so we don't have a discussion in abstract form. We say, here, I sketched an idea, or here, this is how I would word our long-term goal. So in that way, the discussions are cut short, and transparency is much better. Everybody brings something to the table. And we keep moving, right? Progress is more important than perfection. You're never going to get to perfect, but you have to keep moving. And so by having only 45 minutes to sketch, for instance, you're going to not spend too much time on unimportant details, but you are going to try to develop your ideas and keep moving, which is the most important thing, because improvement happens from progress and testing your ideas, not from being in your own head and trying to make things perfect. And of course, it's super simple requirements. These are kind of things that you can buy at most stores. Consistently, the hardest thing for us to get for a sprint is a room where we won't be bothered for 5 days. So once you get that, everything else takes care of itself. So I'll run through the design sprint process, then I'm going to take a look at the questions before we start the simulation. So very quickly, so every day kind of represents a step in the design thinking framework, kind of a normal process of design. So Monday is about choosing a goal, and that's composed of interviewing experts with various forms of expertise, potentially users too. You map out the challenges, you choose a goal, and essentially you define the goal for the sprint for the week. So this is what it looks like when we do a sprint. After we interview the experts, you can see all of these notes. Tuesday is about generating as many ideas as possible, and we do that by looking at other products and looking at the way they solved, similar problems. So a lot of this is called lightning demos, and sketching out as many ideas as possible. So this is from a recent sprint we did in London. We were all kind of looking at products to show. Because I put a timeline of we have a certain amount of time to research, and then we present. And this is what it looks like when everybody's sketching. So we're all sketching ideas. And Wednesday is about making decisions and beginning to converge. And so there's a system in place to review everyone's ideas, everyone's sketches, start voting using sticky notes to create a heat map, and start converging things into a storyboard. So it might look like this, when it's hanging up on the wall, we're all voting on it. And this is kind of drawing a storyboard. Then Thursday is a full day of prototyping, morning till evening, creating a realistic prototype as we can. And this is an example of the type of prototypes that InVision, for instance, one of the prototyping tools, can do. So it's even, the screen share is a little bit jerky, but it's perfect. You can see video, you can play audio, you can, they have all these special effects. It's indistinguishable in many ways from an app, and you can definitely create the feeling of a real app and get authentic responses. And then Friday, of course, is a full day of user testing. So we're going to get at least 5, I say usually 5 to 10 user tests. And then we consolidate. We take a lot of notes during these user tests. We consolidate, and we know what the next step is after the week is over. So this is what it might look like, where usually there's a remote interviewer that's with the interviewee, with the user, and the rest of the team is taking notes in a different room. So this is the structure. This is the sprint structure. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Of course, we actually have 20-something exercises in the sprint. These are a few pictures from a recent sprint we did at the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford. I may mention that later on. And okay, we're ready to sprint, but I'm going to take a few questions. So let's see what we have here. Okay, so the first one is mine, so I'm going to dismiss that. The next one, see if I. Okay, so it looks like the next one is this. Okay, do you think it is better to use a different methodology other than Agile when launching a brand new platform that doesn't require to go live with updates and new enhancements so often? This is a question from Norman. I think there's a minimal level of functionality where it just doesn't make sense to put it in the hands of users when you have less than that, because you haven't delivered the value yet of what the product is. So I would say definitely until you get to that level, Agile, you can sort of do Agile behind the scenes. You can still build it in sprints, but it doesn't have to go in the hands of users until it makes sense to do that. So that's what I've always done, is had a discussion about when is the right place for it to be in the hands of users, where it's still minimal, but it does deliver the value. And then everything that's beyond the minimal can be added later in an Agile fashion every 2 weeks or a month. But it could be 3 months of development before it's actually worth putting it in the hands of users, depending on the product. So, yep, that's my answer to that. Let's see, maybe take another one. Is this a remake app for remote sprint, or do you recommend another app? Okay, so the app that we use is called Miro, M-I-R-O, and the address is miro.com. I'm just going to put a link in the chat. But Miro is just a whiteboard where you can put sticky notes and do a lot of things. We've created our own template on top of Miro. So they deal with the collaboration, but we've created the format that works for our sprints. So thanks, Afshin, for the question. And this is a few more questions. I'm going to take one more. Okay. Any case of success or example using design sprint method in companies of the healthcare sector? Okay, sure. Yes, I know of a couple of examples of successful design sprints in healthcare, but there's also 2 in the book. So if you read the book, there actually there's Flatiron Health is a big one, and One Medical is another one, where they actually ran sprints to in one case, it was to design the clinic and see how the clinic works for younger children. But there's medical devices, there's medical software, and they're all, I don't see any reason why not. As long as you're not testing the ability of a product to actually heal or do the medical work, you're testing, does it work for doctors? Does it work for administrators? Does it work for patients? But it's not the health aspect that you're measuring, it's the user interaction, if that makes sense, and the experience. So, okay, this was the final one for now. And okay, let's start with the design sprint. So let's run a sprint. So if I get your participation today, we're going to do these following, be able to experience these following. We're going to choose the right sprint team. We're going to identify challenges that are suitable. We're going to pick a sprint goal. We're going to get inspired by other products. We're going to sketch out some ideas, and then we're going to perform a quick user test. So it's very ambitious. I hope we'll have time for everything. But that also depends on your participation. So let's get started. So we are now in a quarterly board meeting, and we need to choose the right challenge for the sprint. And so there's a couple of different questions that we might ask ourselves, right? So one of them, which I actually forgot to slide here, is can we use a sprint for a physical product, or is it just for digital software products? So the answer for that is definitely physical as well. You need to be a little bit more creative, but people have used sprints for many things, including Legos. There's a robotics company that uses sprints. I've heard about airlines that use sprints. I've heard about coffee makers that use sprints to create the first prototype. So it's definitely possible. The next question here is it a design problem or a technical problem? So I meet a lot of developers who may want to use a sprint to solve a technical problem. And here I have a simple rule. If you're asking yourself, is this the right problem to solve? And, do we have the right hunch about, solving the problem for our customers? That's a design problem, and it's suitable for a sprint. If the problem is how to make this work technically, then a sprint, it was not designed for that. So you can have a group of very smart people in a room for 5 days, and you might emerge with a technical solution, but then you don't really need the sprint steps. The sprint steps are specifically about testing the right product market fit and the right fit for our users of a design solution. So hopefully that kind of helps clear that up. Another question I like to ask is this something a lone genius could solve, or is this something that only a group of experts could solve because it's too multidisciplinary? And so in general, if a lone genius can solve the problem, hire a lone genius, because first of all, geniuses are not necessarily expensive. And if they are expensive, they're still just one person. And the sprint is going to be more expensive than that. So the sprint is about bringing together a group of individuals with different forms of expertise and gaining from all of their insights and all of their perspectives and creating a synthesis, an integrated product that works, that couldn't have existed without all of these different perspectives. And so a sprint is definitely more of a group effort. But people ask me, is it for new or existing products? So I recently wrote a blog about how to run a sprint for existing products, to improve existing products. It has a few adaptations that I think are necessary. Of course, the original intent was to be the first week of design in the life of a product. So it's a little bit easier for a new product, but you can definitely collect feedback, prepare in advance, and then run a sprint on an existing product. It takes a little bit of thought and adaptation. Big vision or small details. Big vision, 100%. You're not going to get many screens. You're not going to get settings. You're not going to get login. You're not going to get most of these other screens. We can give you 5 to 10 screens that are the right screens and are the screens that kind of define and answer the most important questions. And I think that's what it's for, right? So don't expect it to be a full spec after 5 days. It's not going to happen. Okay, so let's get ready for our challenge today. I thought about maybe doing a Corona-related challenge or a home isolation-related challenge, but I realized people just want to not think about this for a while and just have fun. And so I wanted something that's accessible to everyone, where a problem where everybody knows, and that we can kind of brainstorm and try to solve together. So the problem is protection from the rain. So even though I'm sweating because it's super hot right now, actually just a couple of weeks ago it was still raining. Maybe where you are, it's still raining. So it's a universal problem. We all know rain. Some of us don't like it. And we're going to solve it in digital form. We're going to build some sort of app to help us against the rain. Okay, that's the goal for the sprint. So now we are talking a couple of days before the sprint, and we need to choose the right team for the sprint. So this is my first exercise for you. What type of experts could help solve the problem of rain for people? So what kind of experts would you invite to a sprint like this? And I'm going to wait for you to write it in the chat. So I get meteorologists for sure, right? So if you want to know like how often does it rain and like what's the seasonality and what places are the most rainy in the world, maybe where we can test this, right? Someone who knows about rain, right? A weather expert. So I'm going to let you kind of write a few more things. Mobile app experts for sure, Eric. Architects is interesting. I'm not sure I know why architects, but 3D designer, right? Maybe if we want to design a physical product, we need someone like that for sure. Mechanical engineers, that could be interesting if you want to do a new type of umbrella. Cool. So there's a lot of ideas out here. I'll give you a couple that I think are that I've heard before that I think are really interesting. Someone said an umbrella factory owner, right? Someone who knows all about the economics of when people buy umbrellas, where they buy umbrellas, etc. Fashion designer here. Someone wrote a fashion designer, perfectly right. So I've had people look at sketches we had of an umbrella and they said, "Oh, this looks hideous. I would never carry this around. It doesn't fit with my sense of fashion," right? So someone who knows about fashion could be super interesting. So we have, data analysts, urban planners, nice, psychologists. So all of these are good ideas, right? So we can bring as many different perspectives to the sprint. And as long as we have coverage of the main areas that are relevant to the problem, we're in a much, much better, I always forget to hit go. So we're in a much better area. So there's 3 types of important roles in every sprint. There's the decider, the expert, and the facilitator, right? The decider is the person who's going to lock in the final decision at every round. So we do a lot of voting, but if there's a CEO in the room, they have to sign off on the decision before we move on. Then experts are as many people, different perspectives, like we just said. And the facilitator is someone who's leading the team through the exercises and kind of keeping time, keeping everyone on track. Of course, the decider and the expert could be the same person. One of the experts could be the decider. So these are some relevant roles for a decider. Could be a CEO, product leader, project leader. And the facilitator is usually, the way I like to think about this is kind of like a conductor in an orchestra, right? If you look at a conductor in an orchestra, you think, I can do that too, right? They're just holding a stick and waving their hands. and it doesn't seem like it's that hard. And so I think the same logic applies here. If you buy the sprint book and you have the checklist, you can facilitate a sprint too. But just like the conductor kind of has to be a consummate musician and really understand music, and actually is the glue that ties everything together and makes the symphony possible, a facilitator is kind of an ultimate designer. He's someone who not only understands design, but also understands how people process design questions, understands how much time they're going to need for things, understand how complexity affects, the facilitation. So you want someone guiding the ship who actually knows how to land it on a good solution. Even though they're not doing all of the thinking and all of the designing, they need to understand the process really well. That's my sense of this. Then you take, of course, some other roles that we should consider are someone from marketing, someone from sales. If you have a support person, if it's an existing product that you're expanding, someone from development and design, of course. And we put them in a room that looks like this. This is a bad drawing of a sprint room that I drew. This is from a sprint room that we booked. So, yeah, this one from a sprint room we booked in New York. We like it to be very airy. We like it to be very well lit with natural light, so that we don't want to kill each other at the end of 5 days, but we actually had a nice time. So we are ready to launch. But I will say, yeah, I see the question from Justin. Justin, this session is recorded. A few minutes after this session is over, the replay will be available here in the same room, in the same link, and it will be available for 48 hours after the end of this. You have 48 hours to watch it, and then I'm going to take it down. So just make sure that you want to finish it within the next 48 hours. Okay, so we are ready to launch. Let me see if there's another urgent questions. Yeah, let me just answer this one right here. So a question from Ajay. Are there any design scenarios where you would not choose a design sprint as the ideal option? Yes. So I wouldn't run a sprint if the appetite for change is not very large. So if you have a product that seems to pretty much do fine mostly, and it just needs to be tweaked here and there, or there's a little feature that you want to add, then sometimes you can in an afternoon design it, show it to a couple of people, or follow just a more regular, more standard process. So a sprint is getting a lot of people together, doing something really ambitious, and there needs to be an appetite for change for that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I would say with really complicated software, which we always do, B2B software, very complex things, dashboards and stuff, but don't expect everything in the sprint. So expect to come out with 5 up to 10 important screens that really define the character of what you're building and really helps test the core assumptions, but don't expect more than that. So if you're building a nuclear plant management software, you can do the dashboard and a couple of other key screens, but you can't do all the scientific controls that you're going to need, or it's not going to be that deep in the sprint. So that's my answer now. Okay, so let's go back into the sprint. We are ready to launch. It is Monday. It is the day to choose the goal, and we start by interviewing the expert, by having a conversation. And this is from a recent sprint we did at Oxford University at the Future of Humanity Institute. And these are all the people there, except for me, are PhDs and professors from Oxford or Cambridge who specialize in artificial intelligence, machine learning, or AI ethics and safety. So, this is a very, very specialized field, right? And we start by giving each person their time, where I kind of lead and ask questions and kind of interview them, and everybody's taking notes. And the notes take the form of HMWs, how might we? So if someone says, oh, they're going to steal our umbrellas. Let's say it's an umbrella service. They're going to steal our umbrellas. You don't just write that they're going to steal our umbrellas. You write, how might we avoid the theft of our umbrellas? That's a better way to phrase it. And the point is to collect as many of these so that we can start understanding the scope of everyone's perspective and treat them all the same. So it's a standardized way of taking notes. So in this exercise, I'm going to ask for a volunteer. So if you can volunteer to be our expert on rain, write in the chat, I volunteer. And I'm going to call you up on the air, and I'm going to interview you about your experience with rain. And everybody else is going to take notes as I interview you, so that you can sort of experience what that feels like. So who's willing to volunteer? I'm going to turn on some lights here while you're doing this. Just write if you can volunteer. And if I don't see any volunteers soon, I'm going to start calling out names. Let's see. Norman, you're volunteering? Okay. All right, let's see if we can get you online. So I'm going to invite you on the screen. Hopefully you're not in your pajamas. Let's see. Okay, Norman has accepted the invitation. It's supposed to be coming up online. Says you're connecting, Norman. Okay, I see some other volunteers. So if Norman can't get on the line, I'm going to ask someone else to do it. Norman, are you having difficulties joining us? I've done this a couple of times before. This usually works pretty easily, but occasionally someone just can't get online, and so we have to ask for someone else. Okay, so I'm going to ask someone else. Let's see. Alexis, can you willing to go online? I'm going to try to invite you instead. Let me see. Okay, Alexis has accepted. Let's see if that works. It's okay, Norman. Sometimes some setting is preventing us from joining. That's acceptable. If this doesn't work, then I'll have to skip ahead. I have prepared for every eventuality. So I have I have sample notes to show you and everything, but it's usually nicer if you can sort of experience the interview on your own. So, Alexis, are you able to join us? I need some music for these times. I think it'll be nicer to wait with some music. Maybe I'll put together some music. More comfortable with French. Unfortunately, I don't speak French. Okay, someone is going to translate. All right. Any other volunteers while we're at it? I may just end this because I am not seeing Alexis join. Okay. All right. I think we've waited enough. So I'm going to cancel this. Okay. So not to keep everyone waiting. Essentially, what we all do is we collect notes from the interview. So the person might say, you know, I really hate, the worst thing about rain is wet clothes. I hate walking around in wet clothes, right? So people might write, how might we prevent people's clothes from getting wet in the rain? Or how might we help people replace wet clothes quickly? Or how might we, make people feel better about rain, right? So you could listen to someone and write a lot of these notes, and everybody hears it a little bit differently, which is why everybody's writing. And then we hang it up on the wall, so you can see there's actually hundreds and hundreds of notes all over this room from a day of interviews, and the blue notes are kind of category headers. So you can sort of see that, and then we look at all these notes and we have to consolidate them into a few chosen notes. And so we have a way of voting. So we use sticky notes to create a heat map. And I like to think of it as a budget. So I might give everyone 7 red dots, and it's their budget, and they can spend it however much they want. They can give all of their budget to one challenge, or they could do 7 different ideas, or they might do 3 and 4. So that budget defines how much of a granularity we're going to get on the board. And then the decider gets decider votes, which we usually use bigger green stickers to make it very visible. And they get 5 HMWs to finalize. So usually they would see everybody's votes first. And most of the time they'll actually agree with the team. But sometimes they might say, you know what, I like this formulation better. And because they're the CEO or whoever is in charge, they have the power to do that. We're not actually trying to undermine their authority. So here's an example of 5 HMWs that we might have selected if we had a full day of interviews, right? So how might we give people something familiar and not scary to protect them from the rain? So maybe this drone that flies from above and hovers over your head is not the best idea. How might we show that our service is cheaper than buying and losing umbrellas? So people might say, umbrellas are pretty cheap. Yeah, I lose it every winter, but I buy a new one. How can we show them, hey, it's actually better for you to just use our service instead? How might we convince people to try the service, especially when you think about how ubiquitous umbrellas are, especially in places where it rains a lot. You lose an umbrella, around the corner, you get a new one. How would we avoid losing money during the summer, right? That's pretty interesting. And how would we avoid the thefts of our umbrellas? So these are, by the way, not irrelevant questions. There was an umbrella dispensing app in China, startup that had 300,000 umbrellas get stolen over a couple weeks, and they went out of business immediately. And so thinking about these questions and trying to solve them in the sprint and trying to find a solution that address them is really, really valuable. So once we've selected our top 5 challenges, we have to choose the goal for the sprint, which is kind of the goal for this project, and 3 key validation questions, 3 things that we absolutely have to test during the user testing session. And so we start with the long-term goal. We usually say 2 years. It could be a year. It could be a year and a half. However long we think it's going to take to actually complete this project. And then we ask, what does the ideal world look like in 2 years? So, of course, it has to be related to the product or the challenge, but be super optimistic. If everything goes our way, if everything is 100%, all the doors open the way they should, what does it look like if this sprint started us on exactly the right path? And so I'm going to ask you to write in the chat, start a sentence in 2 years, and then complete the sentence. How would you describe the ideal position for this product, for us, for the world, if everything goes our way with this anti-rain protection app that we're building? So an example here is, in 2 years will be cheaper and more convenient than owning and losing umbrellas. So I want you to write your own version in the chat. And in the meantime, I'm going to find a way to play some music. Okay, I see some answers coming through. That's great. Keep writing. Okay, so I see in 2 years, people will have a solution even when leaving their home not prepared for rain. In 2 years' time, we'll drive a cultural change in clothes people wear in the professional world. Okay, interesting. Won't be surprised by rain showers if they use this app. In 2 years, app will mean can avoid almost rain showers without knowing it. Okay, cool. The service will be available on every corner and every major city street. Okay, that's really ambitious. 10% will use the service instead of owning their own umbrellas. Okay, that's a pretty interesting goal. Cool. So a lot of really great ideas here. So I just want to give you an example. I forgot to hit go again, but we'll keep going. So this is, let's say this is the winning one. Let's say that we go through the same, everybody writes their own, we do a vote, the decider votes, and this is the winning one. In 2 years' time, unexpected rain is no longer a problem for people because of our service, right? So unexpected rain is always a problem because you forget to bring your umbrella, or maybe you don't even have an umbrella. And with our service, it's no longer a problem. And you can see that the wording in this long-term goal really, really matters. So in one of the sessions that I did, they chose the goal, in 2 years, people start loving the rain. So people are not afraid of the rain, they just enjoy it because of our service. So clearly that's a very different goal. Even though it could still essentially be the same app and the same thing, it could take you in a very different direction, with joy being the goal, right? And so now we're going to reverse it. So now we're going to look at the sprint questions, and we're going to put our most pessimistic hat on. And we say, okay, we have this very lofty goal. That's great. what could stop us from getting there? So we're going to phrase it as a can we question, and we're going to ask, what are the 3 things that could stop us from getting there? So here's the exercise for you. You start by writing can we in the chat, and you convert your sinker, the thing that you think might sink the product or could prevent us from getting to the goal, as a can we question. So for example, can we reach people before they buy a new umbrella, right? So maybe it's so fast where people just lose an umbrella and they buy one immediately. Maybe we don't have enough time. So think about other pessimistic things that kind of come to mind and try to write at least one, but you can write also more than one. In the sprint, we usually write 3 each, and then we vote. I'm going to try to play some music. Let's see if it works. Cool. So I see a lot of answers, a lot of really good questions. So I'm gonna pause the music now. But I see questions about umbrella theft. I see questions about really offering a better, cheaper alternative. These are all great questions. So these are, let's say we go through this voting exercise and we each of us actually write 3, and then we do this discussion and we vote, and we end up with these. So these are the 3 that we end up with. Can we find a pricing model that people will be willing to pay? Very important. Can we reach people before they buy a new umbrella? And can we create a better experience than what's available, which is essentially an umbrella, owning an umbrella? And so now we're going to try to map out this product and where these challenges hide. So this is a simple map, but usually, of course, it would take longer and be more complex. But together with the expert, together with the team members in the room, we start drawing out what the process might look like. So in this case, if the user, they discover the need, which means they notice that it's raining. They look at the price. They order an umbrella. The app receives the order. Then there's a moment where either the umbrella approaches the person or the person approaches the umbrella. Somehow they're getting together. There's the moment of meeting and taking hold of the umbrella. Then there's walking in the rain. Then the trip concludes somehow and you finish and pay, right? So let's say this is a kind of a general map of what things look like. So the first thing we do is we actually stick the long-term goal and the 3 chosen can we questions that we need to validate right next to the board. And that really helps to stay connected and identify what we need to test here. And then we take the HMWs that we chose one by one. So the first one is how might we convince people to try the service, right? And so, okay, where does this belong? So it's probably around when the person discovers the need, right? So the next one is How might we show that our service is cheaper than buying and losing umbrellas all the time? Okay, that's around the pricing model, and where the user sees the price, that's when we can validate that our pricing makes sense and that the user, has a good reaction to it. The next one was, how might we give people something familiar and not scary, right? So that belongs somewhere here where, when I order an umbrella, when I know what I'm getting, I need to know that it's something familiar and not too scary. So let's say we went ahead with all 5. Essentially, what we're going to see is a sort of a clump of these, or what we're hoping to see is a clump of these around a certain moment, which has the most challenges. And in this case, we just take a red marker and highlight it. And we can see that most of our challenges hide kind of in the moment where the user discovers the need, sees the pricing structure, and makes a booking or an order. So for instance, so if you're a designer, you should be sighing a sigh of relief right now. So, oh my God, I don't need to design a whole app. There's just this moment that I'm prototyping. I don't need to model walking in the rain, maybe because that we sort of know how that goes. We don't need to prototype the trip is concluded and then you finish and pay, because we've seen that a million times, and that's not where the real challenges hide, right? So we have this moment in the flow that is most important to answer our key questions. Okay, so that's how we end Monday. Monday's done. We go home. And the next day is about generating as many ideas as possible. So we start on Tuesday morning with lightning demos. And a lightning demo is I actually set up a time to research lightning demos. And we each go online and we find the products that are most inspiring to us. And what we're looking for is products, services, companies that have solved similar problems to the ones that we're trying to solve that we selected yesterday. And then we're going to just show it to the other people and show them what the big idea is behind each one. And so if we look at, these needs, right? Seeing the price, ordering an umbrella, kind of the beginning of the user interaction, knowing that it's going to rain, discovering the need, that's where we're trying to focus. So I'm going to ask how many of you can think of products that you would want to lightning demo. We're not actually doing the lightning demos, just throw out the products. So think of the problems and write down the names of companies that solved similar problems, maybe in different industries. And if you can, also tell us why you selected them. What should we pay attention to in those apps? So I'm gonna play the music and let you write some company names. See some ideas. I'll show the map again. Sure. Okay, so I'm seeing some ideas. A lot of people are saying Uber, which is definitely great. Um, I see some things here. Bird, I'm not sure I know. Alan, you wrote Dyson. I know Dyson, but I'm not sure why. What product of Dyson? What would you show of Dyson that you think is relevant? So remember, we get 3 minutes per demo to actually show a particular solution to be inspired by. So with Amazon, with Uber, I can imagine Amazon Click and Collect is interesting. Very interesting idea. Telegrass, I don't know if for the non-Israelis, Telegrass is, I guess, a drug dealer who used Telegram to sell grass in Tel Aviv. And I guess it was home delivery. So maybe that's kind of, that would be a funny demo to show. Cell phone tiers, T-Mobile pricing tiers. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Yehuda, but I would love to understand why that's relevant. But cool. So I imagine we spend a whole day. Usually when we are done with this exercise, we essentially have 30 plus products on the wall. And it would look something like this. So we might have actually 30 products, and underneath we have like one note explaining what's the big idea in this product, and then additional notes with other things we liked or didn't like about each product. So it's actual demos. We actually open the app. We actually show it on the screen to really kind of spark inspiration and ideas in everyone. Then we go into sketching. So the rest of the day is a quick sketch format that takes people kind of step by step in developing ideas. A lot of designers have their own method of doing this, but I find that for non-designers, and a lot of these team members and experts are not designers, this step-by-step process is really helpful. So the first one is to take notes. So you just go around the room and you have to think about what the room looks like at this point. The room is full of, the walls are covered in yellow sticky notes from all the interviews. There's a massive map. There's all these goals in, the can we questions, the key validation questions. There's a whole wall with all of these products that we've already looked at with the research. And so there's a ton of ideas around on the walls, and it's too much. So we spend 20 minutes with a piece of paper, just walking around the room and writing down everything that seems interesting. And that's like collecting time. It's like, oh yeah, I remember when someone said that was really interesting. So you take one piece of paper and you write everything down, and that becomes the basis for your own ideas. And that's really important. Then we go on to the next step, which is developing these ideas. So you just sit down with this piece of paper, and we take another piece of paper and we start developing some ideas from what we've written. And we kind of do this for another 20 minutes. And then we go into quick sketching mode. So we do a crazy 8 exercise, which is 8 quick sketches in 8 minutes. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a way to quickly start exploring your ideas in sketch form, in visual form. And it gets you used to sketching. So it just gets you thinking in these terms. Oh, how can we lay this out? And then this is the main piece, is you choose your best idea so far, and you explore it, at least one idea. You can do 2 or more if you have time, but you have 45 minutes to take one idea and kind of explain it in a story in 3 steps. So you're kind of creating a mini storyboard of your idea of how the user moves from steps to step. And we can use these yellow sticky notes on the side just to explain. It's very minimal. It's just to explain what is this thing that we're looking at, because we really want your designs to explain themselves. Because guess what? Products have to explain themselves. They don't come with a person explaining them. So this is 45 minutes where everybody's developing their idea in a sketch form. And then I collect all of these for review. And usually the Tuesday ends with everybody finished with their own idea, but they didn't really see other people's ideas. And I collect them, then I come in the next morning and I hang them up on the wall. So we're going to try to do some idea sketching of our own. So we all know, we've all heard the rain problem. We've thrown some different ideas. Now imagine you're actually you actually spent 2 days doing this, and you've absorbed a lot, and you've seen a lot of great ideas and a lot of great products, and now you just sketch. And so I could ask you to just sketch an idea on a piece of paper. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just kind of try to formulate your idea, and then take a picture with your phone. And then actually don't email it, because today I'm just doing it mostly on my own. I don't have my usual support. So I'm going to ask you to go to this address from your phone. So it's remakelabs.com/sketches, and upload it. You have an upload feature for the image, and you just choose the image from your phone and upload it. And that will allow us to see the board and see everyone's sketches. I'm going to play some music, and I'm going to give you, 5 minutes to sketch something very quickly, and then upload this to this board. See if we get some nice sketches. So while you're completing this, I'm going to maybe answer some questions. So the next question here is, how do you create a map of a service that doesn't yet exist, right? So essentially, we listen to the experts, we understand something about the problem, we understand where in the user's life does this product fit? So what is the starting point? And then we have to decide, well, how is the user going to discover this product? So maybe it's an app, and we say, well, they discover it by searching something on the App Store. Okay, so fine. So the first step might be the page in the App Store that explains this product, right? And then where did they go from there? Okay, so they download, so they need to sign up maybe. or they need to, usually the first screens in an app actually explains what it does. So you want some onboarding screen that explains what the app does. And then you want to kind of maybe skip the user into the app to see if they can understand how it works and the value. So essentially, the way that a lot of people do these maps is they have discover, learn, and use as kind of three general steps in the map. And then you can start thinking, okay, what goes in discovery? Okay, so maybe they read an article in the New York Times, or maybe it's in the App Store, or maybe it's a Facebook ad, but somehow they discover it, and then somehow they learn about what this does, and then they start using it and discover how great it is, right? And so the end of the map is where they have successfully used the app and are happy, right? That's our goal. And the beginning of the map is usually as early as possible in the process, where they have just discovered the product. So that gives you 2 points, and then you have to think, what are the steps in between? So that's how we do it. And the map, it's very important. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to help us narrow down our focus as much as we can. So we say, okay, maybe let's focus on the very start of the app, the onboarding. Or we say, let's focus on, the pricing tier landing page, because that's where we can find out if the price is right, and that's our most important thing for the sprint. So it's a combination of the goal and the product, and then the kind of the goal and the starting point on the map. But it's very possible. Actually, the map exercise rarely takes more than 15 minutes for me, because everybody pretty much usually is on the same page at that point. So that's my answer to that. Norman, you asked a question about Fibonacci numbers on Agile. That's a separate conversation. I think we actually don't. Design sprints have nothing to do with Agile sprints. It's two different kinds of sprints. Fibonacci numbers, I can't really speak to that. Okay. And then someone asked, is Miro like Trello? No, Miro is like a whiteboarding tool. It's where you can design things, you can upload sketches, you can upload sticky notes. It can do a few of the things that Trello does, but it's essentially this one big infinite space for a project where you can upload all of your stuff. So that's a question from Pooja. Okay. Great. So let me see if there's any sketches. I see someone uploading some image. Okay, interesting. Okay. Yep, images are starting to come in. Yes, it's like Mural, or like actually the whiteboard we're using now, which is Envision Freehand. It's that category of thing. By the way, Envision Freehand is very light and works really great, and they just added sticky notes, so that's another great tool to use in a design sprint. Cool. So we have already a few sketches. So I'm going to see maybe if I can share my screen. Or actually, no, I think, yeah, let me see if I can share my screen. And I'll minimize this presentation screen. And I can do screen sharing. Cool. share. Okay, let's see. Can you see my screen? Yeah, I think you can see my screen. 1 second. Okay, so we are going to, so I'm going to open the sketches that we have. Okay, so we have one screen from Barcelona, 50% rain probability, and then we have order now, and we have schedule for later. Okay, so very simple home screen, right? But it tells you the chances of rain, and you can start the order process. Now we have, this is a very upside down kind of thing. This looks like a special kind of umbrella. Let me see. And oh, that looks like just a regular umbrella. Whoever drew this, if you can explain what this is, because I'm not quite sure. Is it electronic? Is it? Oh, it's an air umbrella. Interesting. So I'm not sure what this is, but it looks kind of cool. A lot of people, for some reason, uploaded on the wrong side. So I'm looking kind of sideways. Do you need your umbrella today? Okay. And then you have, so it looks like you have like the weather forecast, you have some notification, and this hard for me to read, but if the person who did this wants to explain the thinking behind this. Number highlighted, cloudy background, interesting. So let's look at some of the other ones. Oh, so there's a big one over here. Okay, so you see the forecast, the nearest location, and I guess you can add your credit. You can add your credit card to kind of pay for the umbrella, and you get loyalty rewards. Okay, that's pretty cool. Let's see what else is on here. Okay, someone just uploaded a huge thing that covers the screen. Okay. So collect your purchased umbrellas on the way. So this looks like a map. Let's see. This looked like a map where you can do the order. Cool. And then there's another one that shows you a notification. 70% chance of rain today, sends you a notification. So it's you get a notification on your phone, and then you can see the umbrellas nearby. Okay, that's really cool. So more people are uploading. Let's look at this one. So this gives you like actual hour by hour, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., hour by hour weather forecast. Interesting. And then I'm not sure what this is, but I was seeing like 2 umbrellas and the locations, maybe directions to get there. If I show your idea and I don't get what it means, just write in the chat. I think that will be interesting. Cool. Okay, so I think we got a little bit of taste for, now we sort of did one sketch. We did it really quickly. We didn't do the proper, we didn't really do the proper preparation for the sketch, and then we had 5 minutes instead of 45. But I think you can already see you're getting many different ideas here and many different ways of tackling it, and you can start consolidating these ideas into a product, which is what we're going to do in the coming steps of the sprint. So I'm going to go back to my presentation, and it's now Wednesday. So we're done. We did all these sketching on Tuesdays. Wednesday, we come in the morning, and everything is already hanging up on the walls. and we follow the same procedure of sticky notes voting. So we have red dots for everyone, and this time you get unlimited red dots. So you can give, 10 different stickers to one idea if you really like it. But essentially, we're going through this massive gallery of sketches, and everything we like, we give red dots to. And this is super effective, first of all, because it makes everybody pay attention to all the ideas and in really high granularity. And also, if you see a lot of red, you say, maybe I missed something. So you go and take a look, and then maybe you understand what's going on there. So it really helps everyone parse these different ideas. And very quickly, we see a heat map of some of the best ideas on every drawing. And it becomes very clear where the passion is. And then we follow the same process where the designer in the end locks in their, their top ideas to actually combine into the prototype. So I give 3 stickers to the designer to select elements that are definitely going to make it in. And then the rest of the day, the rest of Wednesday, is about actually taking all of these sketches and starting to create a storyboard from all of these best ideas. And we do this together. This is the most open part of the sprint. So we all collaborate, we talk, we sketch. Sometimes I assign someone to do a certain screen. So let's say this is a complex reporting system, and I know some person is, the best person to understand a certain type of report. Then maybe I give them a piece of paper and say, okay, draw your first version of this, and then we can talk about it. And we kind of assign tasks. We also use a lot of the sketches that already exist that we liked to kind of fill in the pieces. So generally speaking, we try to do 6 screens. Sometimes it goes up to 10 if they're not too complicated, but we have to keep it sane because we have only one day to do the prototyping. But the storyboard has to be as full-fledged as you can. So with the real calls to action, with the real language, even if you write notification, when we do the storyboard, it's not just notification. It's what does this notification say? What's the actual language for the notification? What's the call to action on the screen? What does the button say? And trying to get as much real data as possible to show here. Then we have a full day of prototyping, which we can't really do today, except to say a couple of things on prototyping, a couple of principles. So principle number 1 is, you want to be as realistic as possible, but also not at the expense of the requirements of the test. So we know what are the 3 questions that we're trying to test with the users. So sometimes we can sacrifice a little bit of realistic feel and get a couple more screens, maybe not as quite polished as we can make them, but if it helps us answer the questions better, then we should do it, right? That's the guide. And number 2 is essentially with a little bit of imagination, you can prototype almost anything. So all of these things that you're seeing on the screen right now are the results of design sprints, and they found creative ways to prototype. So for instance, the robot is actually in the sprint book. It's a Savio robot that brings a toothbrush to a hotel room. If you forgot your toothbrush, instead of a person, it's a robot that brings you your toothbrush. And they actually had to hide around the corner, remote control the robot to test it with a real, real situation, lifelike situation, and it worked, right? So you can do a lot with clever prototyping. Here's a couple of examples of apps that we did. This is a self-improvement app that we did in England that has some self-tracking, etc. This is a dashboard. This is a complex business dashboard that we did with reporting. There's many different components. This is an app that connects landlords and renters. And so we had like a landing page, and it comes with a mobile app. And so these are all very different types of products. And this is the kit that we did for Oxford. So this is actually a physical box that you get
with like a manual and a map and a technology tree for AI for different milestones in AI in the future. And you get cards kind of listing different technologies and different events that could happen, and different capabilities that different players could have. So let's say, the U.S. government suddenly has a certain capability that it didn't have before, and the Russian government suddenly gets a different capability. So it's a way to kind of simulate the future of AI. The sprint worked beautifully for this, just like it does for software. So I think as long as you can prototype it, it works great. And then the final day, we have a full day of user tests. We kind of sit next to the person if it's a mobile app, if it's in person, not during Corona times. But we can also email on, if we use InVision or something like that, we can also just text someone a link that installs a prototype on their machine, and you can do it this way. They can share the screen with you, so you can do remote testing very easily. And so the way we collect these notes, we essentially create a grid of, we have the different people in the different columns, and we have the different screens or aspects of the product that we're testing in different rows, and we have color-coded notes. So we have green notes for positive feedback, and we have red notes for negative feedback, and we collect it all in a kind of massive grid. I'm going to show you the grid. Yep, it kind of looks like this. And then we also, for each person, we all kind of have to agree on what was the answer for the 3 key questions. So for instance, could we find a pricing model that people were willing to pay? So if you look at all these different people, then 2 people said, no, I wouldn't pay for this, it's stupid. And most people said yes, right? So where the problems are, and just by looking at the color of this, is this mostly green or mostly red, if we nailed it or we still have a lot of work to do. So this is kind of the final and most important result of the sprint, is validating, did we nail it? Did we get the 3 things we needed to get right? Did we get them right? And if we didn't get them right, is it because we didn't do a good enough job, or is it because there's different types of users where we should know that this is not for them? But we have a lot of learning behind each of these nodes. We actually have more feedback and more nodes. So I'm going to talk. We have about 10 minutes before the end, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to get started. But I see 2 questions, so let me just try to answer them. Oh, it says 2 questions, but it only shows 1. Interesting. So let me try to answer that. So other than the use of these wonderful whiteboard apps and software, how else might we make take these sprints online? Okay, so that's a good question. I would say you need a good template. You need to cut short on the time for these sessions, because you can't do a whole day session online. It drives people crazy. So try to give more homework and take more things offline, and do only the pieces that absolutely have to happen together online, on a call. And you can actually shrink the design sprint to 3 hours a day plus some homework for the next day. And so one very good resource to look at is the official remote design sprint resource that Jake put out. So I think it's the sprintbook.com/remote. I think this is the right address for this. It's wonderful. It's a whole guide of how to run a design sprint, and it even has some templates, and it's a really good start if you're running a remote design sprint. And the next one is the next question: how would you prototype a food or snack offering without creating the actual product? That's a great question. So actually, this snack is from an AJ and Smart sprint, and what they were testing is not the snack itself, but it's the package and its ability to to sell on a shelf, and the messaging. So what they did was actually make a fake bar from other bars. The bar itself didn't matter. Use an actual printer, like a package printer, with this fake bar inside, and they created essentially a fake store, like snack bar section, with a lot of actual bars from that are actually out there in the marketplace, in their own bar, and they wanted to see what selections people make. Would they buy this? How does this compare to the other? I think it was like an organic, nutritious, like healthy bar. So did we manage to convey that information on the packaging? Was it more compelling than competition? Stuff like that. So I don't know that you can run a design sprint as is with just the food, the actual food itself. Though I can imagine a workshop like a sprint being good for that, but I can't guarantee that it would work for the food itself. Okay, so cool. So where to get started, right? So I highly recommend the book. I usually like to actually show. I mean, the book is, it's very visual. Designers usually like it because it has, all of these like sketches. It's actually divided into days, and in each day you get sketches and checklists. So it's super super fun just to even browse through this book. And the book's website actually also has a lot of cool templates now, and it has a remote sprint guide now, and it has checklists that you can download. It has some videos explaining different exercises. Same thing with the GV sprint site. So the design sprint section on Google Ventures has some explanations, some videos. Google now has a design sprint kit website where you can download different recipes for different sprints, and a lot of articles and resources and notes about different methodologies regarding the sprint. It's very interesting. Someone invented a 3-day sprint for voice-activated apps. Everyone can invent a sprint and then upload their own recipes. And then these are some of the tools that I think are definitely worth knowing. So, we definitely recommend Figma for prototyping, for the actual design, because it allows a group of people to collaborate in real time. So my designer could be working on a screen, and I can come in and fix a typo and then go back to my own screen. And we can also, so in the Oxford sprint, the only way this was done in 5 days was that I was able in Figma to create these templates and let other people fill in the content. So for instance, we had 150 cards, and 2 professors or 2 PhDs, who are experts in AI future and AI safety, were writing all of these cards, all of these event cards, and all of these technologies. I just created a template, the component, and if I needed to fix something in design, it would automatically apply to everything. So without Figma, I don't think that project could have happened. Then we have Zoom, of course, for remote collaboration and for remote user interviews. Miro is our tool for doing remote sprints, where with all of the sticky notes and we upload the sketches there. It's our one place for the entire sprint exercise. And InVision is something we use for prototypes. Some people really like Keynote for prototypes. Keynote is kind of like a presentation. It's a presentation software that I use to show this presentation. But you can also use it to prototype, because you can link section of a slide to lead to another slide. And you can lock it in the state where there's no controls except for clicking through. And you can make a very nice prototype. The only issue with Keynote is they don't do scrolling so well. Other ways is we actually do boot camps. In normal times, we do 2-day boot camps. in Corona times, we actually divided into 5 shorter sessions that we can kind of schedule. We do this with companies if they want to call us in to teach their team how to run sprints. There's a couple of articles we published in Medium recently. So one is 9 reasons why we start projects with a design sprint. It kind of actually explains some of the less expected reasons why we like it. And this is a really recent one about this is meant for investors, about why design sprints are so important, and trying to understand why investors sort of ignore this, even though it was created in a venture fund in Google Ventures. We also are now beginning to offer this Design Sprint Starter Toolkit, which actually includes a whole bunch of really awesome stuff for people who are just trying to run sprints, just starting. Essentially, it has a full recorded webinar, a full sprint shopping list that we have to kind of re-up on supplies for every sprint. We have the full deck that we use to guide people through the sprint. We have a sprint preparation guide we send to our clients. We have our sprint schedule, our weekly sprint schedule. We have the template for a remote sprint board on Miro. You can use and install and start using on your own. We have our expert invitation that we send to experts. And then we have a collection of the best 20 web resources for design sprint, the best extensions and innovations on the sprint, the best articles, the best resources for remote sprints. It's all collected there. So it's mostly a curation work. It's really the stuff, because you can find hundreds of articles out there, but these are the best 20-something articles. And so you're all welcome. You're all welcome to get it. It's we offer kind of $100 off for people who are in this session right now, if you follow the link right now in the green button that shows below. And that's it. I'm going to take as many questions as I can. Thank you very much. Thanks for the session. Okay, so I see again a couple of questions. So let me answer this one. What are the best ways to convince senior leadership about design sprint? Okay, Darshan, great question. I find that sessions like this are actually the best. So if you can just ask them to watch a session like this, or ask them to sign up to a very short free webinar, free course, and we keep doing this, by the way, people really get converted by watching something like this, because it's a hard concept to explain. But once you understand the power and you kind of see the arc of it and how it works, then I think you can really see it. And by the way, in the starter toolkit, the recording that I include is of a much bigger webinar that we did that had more participation, and we actually got people online. And so I think it shows more of the power even than this one that had a few less people. So let me see if there's any other questions here. Okay. So, all right. Thank you. I don't see any more questions. So thank you very much for everyone. I appreciate your time. I think it's a difficult time to concentrate. It's a difficult, and some of us have already had enough of webinars and Zoom meetings, and we just want to get back to normal life. So I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's definitely, I don't take it for granted, and hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and thank you so much. And for those who weren't able to watch the entire thing, you can just wait a couple more minutes. And the replay will be available right here where the video is playing now. It's just going to load for a while, and then after a couple of minutes, the full replay will be available. And I'm going to keep it up for 48 hours, so everybody that signed up can have a chance to watch. So thank you very much. We are exactly at the 2-hour mark, so I'm going to end this broadcast. Thank you, and feel free on our website to reach out if you have any questions or to reply to the email that I'm going to send to everyone for the follow-up. So feel free. I'm here, and we're all here waiting for your answer. We're waiting for your question. Thank you very much. Oh, I see someone wrote there's one more question. Okay, I'm going to try to answer one more question. Everybody who wants to drop off is welcome to do so. Okay. In a case the design sprint is going the wrong way, how can I identify early? Okay, Oren, that's a great question. So one of the things that I would say is to do a lot of upfront preparation and expectation management. And by the way, that's also something that I'm including in the starter toolkit is our expectation management one-pager, where they have to sign at the bottom before they go into a sprint. And basically what it says is a sprint is a timed process. It's a step-by-step process. And the discussion is structured. It's not open conversation. And you agree to follow the process, basically. And you'd be surprised how much pain this saves, because if someone wants to fight the process, they do that after they've already signed that they agree to follow the process. It's a very different dynamic. And also it makes them think twice. So if someone is really not fully sure that they want to commit to following a step-by-step process for a week, etc., then this is an opportunity for them to think twice and think about, do I really want to do this? Because we do need this commitment. By the way, we don't need the client for the whole 5 days, but whatever part that we agree, which is usually at least 2.5 days, you agree that the client has to participate. We expect them to let us run the design sprint as scheduled. So, we have 45 minutes. We can't stop now for 3 hours to debate something, because that's not the process, and it's going to guarantee that we're going to get derailed and we're not going to get to the goal. So that's what I would say. I've had very few cases where I felt like, oh, it's going the wrong way. I did feel like sometimes I had to remind people that they're on this process. They can't stop and talk. But that's the role of the facilitator, is to keep us moving and trying to keep everybody feeling good about the fact that we only have a set time for every activity. So that's my answer. Hopefully it helps. Oren, if you have any follow-ups, feel free to contact me through the website. Cool. Thanks, everyone. I still see a few dozen people here. So thank you for making it all the way through. And hopefully you've enjoyed it. And let's be in touch. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks.